What's up guys, Cwesolo here, and today we are back for another Unity Basics tutorial. Today we're going to be covering the inspector. This is just going to be a basic tutorial on how to use it, what its functions are, and kind of to get the gist of adding things to different objects in your scenes, or in your levels, or whatever you want to call them, into your game. So yeah, if you like this kind of content, be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell right next to it. Just so that way you won't miss out on any other future uploads, and also more Unity Basics tutorial or Unreal Engine tutorials. I do a little bit of both, and even a little bit more abstract topics such as how to get into game development or various stuff like that. So, and coding. If you want to learn how to code in C#, go check out that series. There'll be a card up in the top right hand corner. Anyway, after shamelessly plugging everything else, let's get right into this. So we have a blank scene here. I have a plane, and we're going to be making a small little first-person character. There's going to be no coding in this video. I got some stuff from the standard assets, Unity standard assets. That's what we're going to be using. So there's not going to be any code. We're just basically going over what the inspector is. So let's just go ahead and click on this plane and kind of go over what the inspector kind of has in there, and just the different things that it's in it in the inspector. So as we can see on the plane here, on our nice little on our plane that we can walk on, which we will soon be walking on, there are a couple things on here, such as the transform. We have the mesh filter, the mesh render, so that way the mesh can actually render. We have a mesh collider, so there's actually collision with this object. We have a material. We have these things up at the top here. This is the name of the plane. We could rename this to be, for example, we can name it to ground, right? We rename the plane to ground. We can have a tag on it. So for example, if I wanted to go and add a new tag, we can go ahead and add a tag. We'll get into tags in a later video and how they're used and what they're used for, but we can add a tag from the inspector. We can add a layer, which this is on the ground layer. We can move it to the default layer, but it makes sense for it to be on the ground layer. Whether or not the object is static, so whether it's just going to be one of this object or if there's able to be instances of this object, and all of that. So this is kind of the basic stuff that's in for this object. Now, for different objects, you're probably going to have different things on it, right? So let's go ahead and make a first-person character here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to just make a a quick little 3D object, and we're going to add a capsule here, and we're going to make our nice little capsule. We're going to zoom in on him, and we're going to actually bring him above the plane here, just like this. There's our nice little capsule, and we're gonna go ahead and take this rigid body FPS controller here, and we're gonna actually make this this capsule a child of this object, right? And as you can see here, we have a camera attached to him. We can actually move him around, and we're gonna make him 0.5 on the transform, and we're gonna transfer this to be 0 and that to be 0, so that he's kind of like in the middle of the scene. So he should be right here, and I don't think 0.5 is enough. I think 1 is where we're going to want him. So, and we're going to change this rotation to 0. So yeah, as you can see on this one, in this case, we have a capsule on the rigid body controller here. We have a rigid body, so it has a capsule collider and the script for controlling the rigid body controller. This stuff is the settings that come with the Unity standard assets. So real quickly here, we're gonna make an object in the scene that we can interact with, and we're gonna make this ourselves. This is kind of already pre-made for us, so we're gonna want to make something that we actually can interact with ourselves here. So let's go ahead and grab a cube for our player to interact with. So we're gonna go ahead and go to here again, 3D object. We're gonna make a cube, and we're gonna move it on over this way, just not too far. We're gonna move it on over this way. As you can see, the cube here has a cube filter, mesh render, and a box collider. We're going to be adding a rigid body to this, so that way it's affected by gravity, and we can move it around a little bit and play around with it. So to add a component in the inspector, you click this nice little add component here, and as you can see, you're going to get a whole bunch of different options here. And there's a nice little search tab here, and we're going to get rid of rigid body, but you have plenty of different tabs here that we can go to. You have visual scripting if you want to use Bolt, UI elements, stuff like that, scripts if you want to add a C# script or one of the pre-made scripts that are already clearly here in the standard assets, or Unity pre-made scripts. physics, stuff like that, physics 2D. Depending on your object, you might have all this stuff. You can even add an audio sound to this object as well and program it to make noise when we bump into it. There are plenty of different things, plenty of these different components that we can add to our object. But for this one, we're going to add a rigid body. We already have a box collider, but we're going to be adding a nice rigid body on it. And we are going to check that it is using gravity, and I think this is fine. We can increase the mass a little bit. Let's say the mass is like 5. I believe the mass is in kilograms, but you might want to go check the Unity documentation just to confirm that. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's in kilograms, but you might want to check the Unity documentation. So be sure to go check that out if you're confused on what kind of units Unity uses. So that might be worth checking out. All right, now that we have our nice little box here, we're going to go ahead and go into the play view here, and we're going to play around with it. So after adding this component, we have seen that the box was before floating, and now it is on the ground here, and we can interact with it. We can move it around, flip it over, and we can interact with this object. And as you can see, with the rigid body on it, it is able to move, and we can jump on top of it and move it around. So yeah, that's pretty cool that we can add this this rigid body here, and we can go ahead and give this object to move around. It'll rotate and stuff. And each of the different things, each of the components have different settings here, as you can see. So for example, if we wanted to change the material of this object, right? We want to change the material. I don't think I have any other materials that we can use on this. We'll check the standard assets here and see if they have any materials. Let's see here. We can I'm not sure that I have any other materials that we can use with the standard assets, and I know I don't have any extra ones here, but maybe we can change the color of this nice little object. But yeah, let's see if we have some other materials. Oh, so we do have some materials. So we can go ahead and each of the different components on here have different settings that we can change. So as you can see, we are loading up some materials here. We'll go ahead and just throw on this turquoise one right here. So as you can see, we have a turquoise kind of material for our box. And now it is on here. As you can see, we can check whether or not it wants to cast shadows and stuff like that. Each component that you put on this thing is going to have a different kind of different settings and stuff that you could play around with. So for example, the rigid body here has constraints, so you could freeze the position and rotation depending on whether or not you want it to rotate or move in any kind of given direction. If you wanted to freeze this direction, you can freeze it and stuff. Like the rigid body first-person controller is kind of a good example of when you would want to freeze some constraints here, and we have the free rotation frozen on X, Y, and Z, so that way our character just doesn't topple over in some direction, right? We don't want it to topple over. We want our character to stay straight up and down. Interestingly, the camera is not in a very good position here either. This camera should be way up here. But yeah, so as you can see, there are plenty of different settings, and even on the camera here, it has some other settings too. Like here, it has an audio listener and a head bob script, and each of these things can be changed, and you could go ahead and change these settings. And this is on a script too, so there are some pretty cool things you could do with scripts also, and you can add these kind of functions that are on here, kind of like almost like how these have different buttons and functions on the components here. So yeah, each thing is going to have its own kind of thing, and again, we have the tags and stuff, and since this is a prefab, we actually have some extra options here. So we can actually save this prefab with this capsule on them. So we can actually save this. We can open the prefab. This is what the prefab is. This is what it looks like. We can even save the prefab or make a new prefab off of this current prefab. So considering this is a player, we could tag it as a player, and it's going to be on the default layer, obviously. And yeah, so and then it'll say yes. Would you like to change the children? Yes, we can change the children. So that way they're all on the right kind of tag. And then if we wanted to, we could drag this down here and save it down here. And we could even save it as a prefab variant. There's a lot you could do here with the inspector. Since it's a player, we can make it static. If you only have one player, you may want to do something like that. But yeah, so this is basically the inspector and kind of all of its features. It allows you to add components. Just in a quick summary here, it allows you to add components. Each of the components have their own unique settings. And you could add the inspector allows you to see scripts and stuff like that you have added to the object. Different things have different kinds of components that are already pre-attached. So for example, the plane here has its own different kind of elements, components on it, and you can change the different component settings as you please. There are plenty of different components you can put on, everything from audio all the way down to just custom scripts. If we need custom functionality that isn't offered here, most likely you will have to make scripts for this, whether it's a visual script or an actual script written in C#. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the inspector. Really nothing crazy. It just allows you to add components, and you can change and modify the components and add scripts. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Nothing really crazy. So yeah, I think that's going to do it for this video, though. If you guys liked the video, leave a like, comment if you have any questions or anything like that. Go ahead and ask them in the comments. I'll have a couple links in the description to the Unity documentation if you are curious, a bit more curious about the inspector or just stuff like that. I'll have a link in the description to the Unity documentation. Also, go wishlist my game on Steam. It'll be releasing probably at some point in 2022 if everything goes according to plan. So go ahead and click that link in the description to go to my Steam page and click that nice little wishlist button on there too. That would be awesome if you could do that. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out and have a wonderful day.